Well, hi, Kelsey. Good to have
Hey,
you here.
hey, Chris.
Hi. Okay, so the topic today is content marketing, and we're here to help companies, supplier partners, vendors, whatever you want to call them, do better content marketing in their outreach, in their marketing overall, when they're trying to serve associations, when they
Mhm,
want to sell to associations.
mhm.
Use content marketing as one of those channels. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And I appreciate you being here because you have a lot of experience and you have a lot of opinions
I do.
and that's great. And I want you to tell us a little more about yourself in a minute, but I want to just jump right in. Tell us where we're at with like content marketing. We have Chat GPT, we have Claude, we have this, and are people really writing? What about the M dash? All of this crazy stuff. We don't want to start on the M dash, right?
Well, I
Uh,
feel very strongly about the M dash, but yeah, we can get to that later.
Maybe we'll get to that, yeah. But just tell me what you think the state of things are right now. Frame it up for us.
So there is a divide right now when it comes to content marketing. It's simultaneously easier than ever to create content, both for marketing purposes and for other content purposes, thanks to AI, those tools that you mentioned earlier and others. But it's also more of a crowded space than it ever has been before. So it's hard to differentiate yourself from the other players in the market. But just because the volume of content marketing has skyrocketed, that doesn't mean that the value that the content marketing brings has. AI lowered the barrier to create that content, but it did not give anyone the skill that was required to
Mm.
create that content. So, if you're looking for, say, a power skill or a hard skill, there's so many terms for it. When it comes to content marketing, it's editorial discernment.
Mm.
People think, between editorial and marketing, there is this separation of church and state. And of course, there is. But I'm not talking about editorial in that it's like completely neutral, it's unbiased, it's facts. I'm talking about the ability to have good editorial judgment. And we can get into that a little bit later about what that means. But the thing to remember is that generic content doesn't convert. More and more audiences are expecting tailored insight to their company, their industry, themselves as a person. And this goes back to the downside of AI. With AI generating the same voice for everybody, having a clear, consistent brand becomes your competitive advantage.
I love that. It sounds like what you're saying is what we need to think about is sort of the funnel in a way. And I know people like are pro or anti funnel, and I get it, funnel's dead, but it helps to frame it up. Top of the funnel, just educating, um, top 7 reasons, that kind of content, right, is diminishing because ChatGPT not only can people create that easily, but it can answer those questions for you. But it sounds like middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, when they're closer to buying, is that a place where it makes sense to create more content right now?
I don't want to say more content because you should never create content just for the sake of creating content. It needs to have a purpose. But I agree with you. Well, I also heard recently someone in some sort of social media post say that the marketing funnel is irrelevant. And
Yes.
I mean, yeah, like marketing changes over the years, but I don't think the marketing funnel is ever going to be completely irrelevant. There is still the top of the funnel where people are learning about who you are, and they're still the bottom of the funnel when you're converting them to be a member, to be a customer, whatever. But I do agree with you that you do need to focus a little bit more on those middle stages, the interest, the desire. And that is where you're going to be creating more personalized content. And yeah, I agree with you that that is really where vendors should be focusing their time. They should be marketing to associations the same way that associations should be marketing to their members. And that is with an understanding of what they're facing, the challenges, the opportunities, and what solutions that they can provide before the customer or the member buys something. So I've
Yeah.
said to my team for years, you lead with value. Even when I was managing editorial teams, my mantra has been instruction over information, impact over alert. I heard a colleague who was in sales and marketing for the organization I was just with sum it up really well. So there's what, there's so what, and there's now what. It's
Mm,
not enough for somebody to know the information. What they want to know is how they can use that information and why it matters to them. And so how does that translate into content marketing? Well, buyers, especially association buyers, they're allergic to overt selling. Like it needs the
yes.
content needs to solve real operational problems. So the companies that are going to win, they focus on educating, clarifying, providing perspective, not creating product brochures disguised as blogs. It's just an example of this. In one of my previous organizations, we created a new product where it was a dedicated email sent to members that we offered up to advertisers. The association had never done anything like this before. And it was insanely popular, like sold out before the
Mm,
year started because we limited it to twice a month. But we said over and over again as editors while we were working with these companies that they really needed to write copy that demonstrated thought leadership, not just list the product features. Guess which emails performed the best? It
mm,
wasn't the ones that said, click here for a sales flyer or click here to contact a representative. It was like, click here to
mm,
download our calendar for this, that, and the other, or click here to, it was like a how to guide. That's where people were clicking because it was useful.
mm, mm. I love that, and I just realized I've been smiling the whole time you're talking because I just love every single thing you said, and I can imagine people listening to this, like, furiously writing or typing notes because you gave, like, a million gold nuggets in
Oh,
there.
good.
Yeah, that was great. And so here's a nuanced question, and I think you're the perfect person to answer it. If I'm a company and I'm trying to market to the association space, I look at the association as my client. Yes,
Mhm,
they're going to be your client. They're the one that's going to write you the check. But how important is it to look beyond them? If you're in a B2B environment, you have a customer, they have clients or customers
mhm,
too, but how much should we be talking about the member of the association? And how do we, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do we
mhm.
tie that in as opposed to just saying you're an association and you need this? Shouldn't we be talking about how we're helping them serve their members? Is that
Absolutely.
the
Any association worth their salt, their number one priority is to serve the member. If they're not looking to serve the member, if they're looking for revenue generation, if they're looking for self promotion, they're not in the right business. Now, that's not to say that associations don't want to make a profit. That's not what nonprofit means. I always have to tell people that. But it's all about the mission and it's all about the members. So, yes, you want the association to get your business or you want to get their business. But in order to do that, you want to look at what's their mission and what do their members want because the association is there to serve the members. So if you can give them a tool, a product, a solution that is going to improve how they serve their members, you're immediately up at the top of the list versus a vendor who is just thinking about, well, we can raise more money for you because we can increase registration for your annual conference by X percentage. Well, of course, yeah, they want to do that, but like, should that be their main goal? No. Why would it be better for the association's
Mhm.
members for you to work with them?
That's what they want to put in the messaging. So I think that's
Yeah.
going back, like you said, there's with content, there's this quality versus quantity issue,
Mhm.
and there's always that at play. But there's also just messaging, and I think that always is what I always come back to is if your messaging isn't right, it doesn't matter how many ads you buy and send people to a page. It doesn't matter how many demos you might do to an if you're
Mhm.
not speaking their language, it just feels like in this market over all of them, you're not gonna get as far.
Yeah, and that really goes into what vendors need to do to reach associations, and something I think they're often lacking, they need to speak the language of associations. They're not corporations. They're not even the same as like another form of a nonprofit. They have all these nuances. They operate with committees, boards, bylaws, strategic plans. And so the vendors that really succeed, they understand that there's decision making cycles that are
Mhm,
pretty slow. And there's volunteer dynamics. They have different types of revenue models, but usually due based revenue models. So the content that these vendors are creating needs to reflect how these associations actually work. They're probably going to be slow in coming to a consensus. They need
Yes.
team approval. There's implementation constraints. It's just not generic B2B selling. On a little bit of a side note, that is why I do recommend that any vendor that wants to work with an association and wants to do content marketing for associations, they should be hiring writers or working with contracted writers who do understand the nuances of associations. I, as a former recovering journalist, I really do believe that a good writer can write about any topic,
Yeah.
but associations are not a topic. They are
Mhm.
an industry that has its own quirks and nuances. And plus, any organization that's hiring just a writer, they need to be hiring a content strategist, not just a
Mhm.
writer. And that requires having a lot of insights into how associations really work.
Being able to make some decisions in your writing, being able to think strategically as you write, is what you're talking about, right? Not just
Yeah,
I
be able to
write
think,
copy, but having
yeah,
a grasp on the context.
yeah. What's the purpose of this content? What is it serving? And how is it integrating with every other piece of content that you're creating? And more so than that, how is it integrating with other forms of marketing that you're doing? Like, it's all about the strategy. And I mean, it's about the writing, but y- the writing only goes so far if you don't have good strategy surrounding that writing.
Agree, agree. Let's get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. I mean, tell me what what do you find is effective, and what have you seen maybe that isn't effective?
So, associations love data. They just love it. You see different vendors releasing, the state of association technology and the state of this, that, and the other. And then they create webinars around that report release and people attend it and people are downloading it. So they love to figure out like what's going on in the industry, how they benchmark against other associations. So those are some really good ways of getting people engaged in your content. Some other things that I think work that I've seen over the years. Blogs are good. Blogs are cool. A helpful blog is
They're still
great.
hanging around, yeah.
They're still hanging around. They're never probably never gonna go away.
I'm a true
Um,
believer, I am.
yeah. Oh, I agree with you. But the more actionable the content, the higher the engagement you're gonna get. So while
Mm,
an association staff member might read a blog, and they'll probably take away some good stuff from it, what they're really gonna love is tactical content that helps them act, that helps them work. So checklists, templates, step-by-step guides.
mm,
Those things they're gonna resonate. In my last role, I had an editorial team that produced hundreds of news articles per year. Like, the
mm,
volume of news articles was astonishing. But when they did surveys about what people liked the best about what they got from the association, it was our member-only resources. So, it was our how-to guide,
mm,
it was our policy templates, it was the checklist, the this, that, and the other, that's what people like the most.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it's actually helping them do their day-to-day job.
What are some things that you, just cringe at? You're like, "Oh, just please don't." I mean, I can tell you one of mine, but, like, please stop.
Gosh, great question. So, I think something that I'm seeing a lot of now, or maybe it's always been there, is publishing content without sources, without fact checking.
Mm,
Downfall of AI is that you cannot rely on it for research right now. I mean, I will say even at my last organization, even the internal GPT, when you ask for it to come up with research or statistics about a certain topic, that all of our own research was loaded into this GPT, it still came back with statistics and research that just didn't exist. I don't know what it is. I don't pretend to understand the technology and why AI cannot figure out how to get research right, but
yeah.
just try it. Ask for statistics and the sources, and then try to independently fact check those
Yeah.
statistics and sources, and I guarantee you can't do it. It'll have made it up out of nowhere. So I always look at when a vendor or, anything has a percentage, a statistics, some sort of research claim that doesn't have
Mhm.
a specific, like, where it came from. I give it the side eye because one,
Yeah.
like, that's authority, that is trustworthiness, and it also sometimes makes me think that they just created it with AI, and it's probably not even real to start with.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned 2 of the 4 EEAT SEO
Yes, yes, yes,
things,
yes.
and, just anecdotally, what do you feel like, how important should SEO be taken by somebody that's out there? Here's the context of my question. People don't have all the time in the world to do marketing. They should hire somebody to do it for them. Cool, but they still have a budget to pay that person to do
Yeah.
things too. So, like, when is SEO important, and is it important at all for somebody that's trying to reach out to associations?
SEO is important. I think SEO will always be important, but it's actually not where marketers should really focus their learning, I guess, right now, because there's now AEO, and
Mm,
that's answer engine optimization. And that matters just as much, if not more, these days. So AEO is, when you Google something now or search something, right up at the top, now Google gives this AI overview and it does link to sources. And so, what's more important now than SEO, which is how you get your content up ranking at the top of the search results list? Now, what you really want to do is get your content as part of that AI overview.
mm,
And it's not easy. And it's like an entirely new way of thinking about things. And it's not that keywords don't matter anymore. They do matter, but you can't just keyword stuff and think that you're going to get very far. You have to demonstrate the experience, the expertise, the authority, the trustworthiness.
yeah. So good, so good. And so if we look at SEO, let's call it a channel. But again, I have limited resources or limited budget for my content marketing. What should I for sure do? What should I just absolutely do at a bare minimum?
For SEO?
No, just for
Oh,
content marketing in general.
oh,
Like,
for content
is
marketing.
SEO one of those things? It sounds like it's not, but like, what is the channel that people should be that's that works well, or that you would say at a bare minimum out there, everybody, you got to at least be doing this.
Chris, it's an interesting question because my answer is not necessarily going to be what you think it is, because I'm not
Okay.
going to name a channel. I'm not going to
Okay.
say you should go on LinkedIn, you should send more emails, you should post more on your blog. What you need to do is focus on relationships. And how does that integrate
Mm,
with content marketing? Because you need to be going to the channels where your buyers are, where your association buyers are. So, what does that mean? It means you need to be forming relationships with people in associations. So, become a regular poster on ASA's Collaborate and not like answering and going, "Oh, I have this great product that you should hear about," but like actually contributing to the conversation. Um, you should be pairing with associations to do thought leadership webinars. You should be, doing sponsored content in association publications or on, association websites, but again, not to sell something, but to establish yourself as an authority in the industry that understands what associations want and what associations are doing. You can sponsor research with associations. So I know you were looking for me to say like one
kinda.
distribution channel. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that because it's not all about one distribution channel. It's about finding the channel where your targeted buyers, aka associations,
Mhm.
are.
Great. So insightful and so smart. If there's like 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, things that you wish people knew about doing business with associations. You know what I mean? Like, if you only knew this about us, you would have never said that or something of that nature. You would have never sent us an email that said this if you knew anything about us. Is there anything that comes to mind around something like that?
Well, I just wanna share one of the funniest, I guess, email pitches I got, and I guess this is more of a PR thing,
Yeah.
necessarily content marketing, but it all goes hand in hand.
It all goes together,
Um,
sure.
I for a long time, I worked with an association that was focused on children's health and hunger, and I was the managing editor of their magazine, and I will never forget the best email pitch I've ever gotten was from a company who was trying to pitch me on their THC products.
Okay.
I guess they thought that cafeterias needed more THC in them.
Of course. Yes.
So, I mean,
Oh,
and that's
man.
just like
That's
basic
rough.
marketing. That's
Yeah.
PR 101 is like know your client, know your customer. But beyond that, I think something that is really, you know what? I'm going to go back to what I was saying before. It's about the
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
The association industry is smaller than one might think. A lot of people know a lot of people. And I've seen this affect marketing and customer service in a lot of different ways, good and bad ways. So I can give a couple of examples. And this first one goes to show why a lot of your content marketing should be about or should be made up of case studies, testimonials, benchmarks, the ROI of what it means to use your product. So at one point, I was trying to build a business case for about why the association I was with should make a major change for our marketing platform. It would be significantly more expensive. I mean, we're talking like 5 times the amount
Wow.
of what we were paying at the time. And like within the marketing team, we knew that this would make a huge difference. But of course, leadership, like they're like, well, it seems to be doing okay with what we're paying for now.
Mhm.
They just didn't get it. And so we were talking to a really, really large marketing platform. Like so many associations work with them. And I kept asking over and over, do you have any sort of statistics, use cases, ROIs that you can
Yeah.
send me that I can put in this business case for leadership? And I never got it. And like, why didn't they have that handy? I mean, that when we're talking about content marketing, I would say use cases and case studies and, statistics about how other associations have
Mhm.
successfully implemented your product. That's going to be like number one thing. And then let's see. So the other thing to remember is that people in associations, they might change jobs frequently, but
Mm.
they often stay in the association community for decades. And your reputation matters more than anything. So your long-term success is going to come from being a partner and not a vendor. And that goes back to what I was saying about when you asked me like where should you put your effort? Well, you should put
Yeah.
your effort where the association or where your buyers are because that is how you're going to build those relationships. So if you think about content marketing as more than just the written word, and I can go back to that in a second.
Mhm.
Think about it as a webinar with an association partner. If you think about it as sponsoring research with an association partner or doing research on the association industry, that helps you become more trustworthy in the market. And people are going to be more likely to go to you when they have a solution. But it's also really important that you nurture those relationships
Yes.
even when you don't see it having a clear benefit for you. And I guess this goes more to customer service than to content marketing, but I think it's really important. I have an example that I was working with a vendor in my last role who was being really difficult. They just
Mhm.
like weren't responding to things. They just didn't seem to want to help us because they knew that at the end of the contract, we weren't renewing them. We'd already told them that.
Wow.
So it was like, well, why should I really bother to go out of my way to help
Yeah.
you? Until they found out that as a contractor, I worked with another client of theirs, a pretty big client, in
Mm.
a role that directly related to what services they offered. They didn't know I was in that role. It wasn't like was communicating with them as
Yeah.
a contractor for that association. But it's strange how when they found out that I was in that role and they found out that I was in ASAE and had been part of the Communications Advisory Professionals Committee, their tune changed pretty quickly. But it was too late. There was
Yeah.
nothing they can do, and I truthfully think that they're gonna lose the contract for the other association. Not because of me, but because once I said something to my contacts there, they started looking more closely
Mm.
at certain aspects of their partnership and realizing that they were actually having the same struggles that I was having with them. It's a small community.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I think there's more than one story like that out there in our industry. I think there are, and it can take you down. Something else I wanna go back to that you said, though, which is, again, so insightful and nuanced, is about the decision making has to go through a process, and ultimately, you have to present to the board your recommendation, right? I mean, staff and leadership have to
Yeah.
say, "No matter what, here's our recommendation, here was at play, here's how we got to our decision." That's almost where you might start, is saying when they need to sell us, and a mindset that I used to have is whoever I would talk to in a sales environment from the association, I would say, really what my job is to help that person look good to the people that ultimately they might be recommending us to.
Mhm.
And when you put that lens on it, right? I mean, you put that lens on it, everything changes. It's not a sale. You use
It
the term
really
partnership, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's not like associations are going to the board for every little piece of
Right.
technology or solutions that they invest in, but those big ones, if you're an AMS vendor and you're trying to get an
Yes.
association to switch to your AMS, that's not gonna be a quick product. If you want to redesign an association's website,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a really slow process. These are big investments, and it's gonna take a lot of time for the people you're selling to convince their leadership, and then their leadership to convince the board to allocate money and time and effort to these solutions. So going back to what I was talking about, where I was in an association that we were trying to update our marketing platform, we were working with a CRM, and they were so fantastic because they were so patient with us. I'm telling you, this vendor understood associations. They
Mm,
understood the pace of associations. They understood that if they pressured me, I would just get annoyed because there's nothing I can do about it. I'm trying to build this business case, and you're just going to have to help me build the business case. And I will say, they were not the ones who were not giving me what I needed to build the business case. And they just
mm,
had to be patient with it. And unfortunately, I left the association before any change
mm,
was made. And as far as I know, they never got that sale. However, I still have great relationships with the people at that CRM. I saw a couple of them at an association event on Tuesday. When I am in a role and I have the opportunity to implement technology that they assist with, guess who I'm going to first? Because I know they get it and I know
yeah.
they're patient and I trust them. And that's you want your content to do the same thing. You want your content to show that you understand the associations and they can trust you.
You can repeat something we've already talked about, but, like, what's the, like if you wanna get into the association market, whether it's content marketing or anything, like,
Mhm.
what do you say to them?
Hire someone who knows associations, the field, the people, the missions, how they're mission driven organizations, how they're there to serve their members. It's one thing to be good at marketing, it's one thing to be good at content marketing, but you cannot put a price on the experience of people who understand the field. Whether you're hiring a writer or content strategist that understands associations, whether you're hiring a director of sales who understands associations, operations, you need people who can come in and help you acclimate to the space. I would say the one final thing that I would leave association vendors with when it comes specifically to content marketing is to reiterate that you need content that goes beyond surface level. You need content that is thought leadership, that maybe AI helped you with ideas for it, but it is not AI written. It is tailored to associations, it is tailored to your client. Associations are there to serve their members. They're there to serve their mission. And therefore, the marketing, the content marketing that you do to help partner with those associations must show how you will help advance their mission, not just serve a technical need.
So, Kelsey, let me ask you, we've covered a lot of great ground, and if we're talking about just strategic level, and that's probably a better place to put it, h- how important is that? What can we do strategically in content marketing right now? What are your thoughts and ideas around that?
There's a lot of different ways to straight shape a content marketing strategy, but one that I feel like works best is to let your audience shape the strategy.
Mm.
Not only do associations love data, but you have your own internal data about your audience that can help you shape your strategy. In my last role, when we were looking at what to create content around, we had different topics at different times a year that we wanted to hit because it made sense for what our members were doing at the time. But we focused so much on our internal data. Of course, our SEO results, the keywords that we're ranking, but also our internal search bar data.
Mm.
Our members, what they were calling our knowledge center to ask about where the patterns arise there. So if you listen to what your audience says, if you know where to look, for example, if you are hosting a webinar with an association partner, or not even an association partner, hosting a webinar on your own, what questions are being asked in that webinar? There is just this volume of data where you would expect to look for it and where you wouldn't that will help you shape that strategy. You just have to know where to listen to it.
Yeah, Kelsey, it was great. We covered so much good ground, and you just provided just so much valuable information. And I know people that are listening to this are going to just find it wildly valuable. So thank you for your insights and your time. It was great to see you and great to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was great to be here.